Welcome to PhillyCocoa Presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 77. It's a developer's journey into making cool stuff. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are PhillyCocoa, a Philadelphia-based Cocoa Heads community focused on Apple development. That primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, watchOS, and visionOS development. PhillyCocoa's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey. Whew. All right. We're going to run a tight ship today because we're going to stay focused on one topic, at least I think. And it's a topic that was brought up by our.
I don't know.
Question. We do deviate. So let's hope for the best, shall we? But the topic today is app monetization, and it was brought up. It was brought up as a conversation point in our Slack group that you can find a link at phillycocoa.org.
Nice.
But Aaron, Steven, I'm sorry if you can kind of give some color around how the conversation came about.
Yeah. So in the PhillyCocoa Slack, I think one of the newer members has an app and was talking about monetization strategies, paid up front versus subscription, and a lot of different opinions are kind of thrown in there and some examples of different apps. And we thought this is a topic we've discussed before multiple times on the podcast, but kind of scattered throughout episodes. And we figured it's a good opportunity to just kind of bring it all together, kind of check in with where our head is on the app monetization landscape right now, especially because as we said last time, we're thinking there's kind of more of an indie wave, we think, building. So it's a good time to think about how do you actually make money if you're going to build an app. And I think that the experimentation in the space the last several years has led to some interesting examples of app monetization strategies that are not maybe as simple as and straightforward as you may think naively. Like it's not just paid up front and then monthly subscription anymore. There's a little bit more nuance to it. So we're just going to go through, I think, different categories of ways of monetizing. Oh my God. Now I've caught the Kotaro disease.
What?
I can't pronounce words in the beginning of the podcast.
How did I do it? All right.
Monetization. We're going to talk about monetization examples.
Making the money.
Yeah. The original poster, the OP, as they say on the internet, right? The app was, I think, a paid up front app. So I thought that might be a good place to start.
Right. So it's
still a thing you can do. You can still click that box.
I mean, that's technically the OP way, right? The obviously the original way when the App Store first came out was, just paid up front. You can either sell for free or you pay up front, right? And usually the apps, especially on the iPhone, was probably, average would start out with maybe $3, $5, $10, tops $20, maybe, with some exceptional ones. But you had to be a pretty exceptional app to be above $20, unless you're the Get Rich app, which was $100 scam app. But anyway,
oh man, that's dating us. I remember.
Well, I mean, we've been there from the beginning. But one of the success stories that is continued to boggle my mind how they still end up making money. Doesn't entirely boggle it, but is a app called Procreate, and the sister apps of Procreate Pocket and Procreate Dreams, which is Procreate is for the most part a drawing app. Basically, if you're a concept artist or an artist in general or an aspiring artist, it's a great app. Paid up front, very cheap. Last I remember, it was close to $13. I don't think it's deviated too much from that price. Maybe a little bit. They should be charging $20. To be honest, they should be charging $50. If I'm being quite frank, it surprised me that they kept that price for so long. Probably partially because I suspect they keep their head counts pretty low. They make exceptional amount of money. They're always the darling of any Apple demo related to iPad specifically, and it's an iPad exclusive app. That's what makes it even more fascinating. So it's a kind of like an interesting niche to rich kind of situation where they make a lot of their money you know, through, I guess, the continuous stream of people who are aspiring to draw and kind of need something fairly easy to get into. And the beauty about Procreate is it's a tool, it's an art tool that just gets out of your way. It's very easy to get in, start to draw something, and then, just and then just create something relatively fast and pretty nice too. So like it reminds me a lot of like Corel Painter or I think that was a tool.
Yeah.
One of these like really easy to get into art programs that back in the Mac days, old Mac days of good art apps. So it just strikes me as a very great example of a paid upfront app, and part of it's because they have a pretty strong moat in that business sense, where it's hard to replicate cleanly. Like you're just not gonna be able to copy that engine. It's not an easy thing to copy. The UI might be easy, but everything else is about it's hard.
Well, if Procreate has a moat, and that's the reason why they can do the paid upfront so successfully, or part of the reason, right? It's a high quality app and difficult to reproduce. What do you think about Things 3 that's also on our list here? Because Things 3, I mean, I don't currently use it. I use OmniFocus, but like OmniFocus is an obvious competitor to it. And Things 3, I didn't realize, I guess it's still paid up front. But there's 1.5 million kinds of apps like that. Is it just because Things 3 is particularly well polished, you think? Or is there something else about the business model?
I mean, Things 3, that part I'm not too familiar with because that was just one I just saw on the App Store. Like, oh, it's on the Mac App Store, it's on the iPad, it's like practically everywhere. So, one of the things that
it's a really good app.
Strikes me as fascinating is like it is kind of an old app in a lot of ways. It's been around for a long time. And so when we talk about like OGs, it's like one of the ones that's just it's kind of like PCalc in the sense of like it's just everywhere. wherever you have the chance to find it, but I guess it's mostly paid up front. So like on the Mac, and they price it according to the platform. So on the Mac, as we're looking at right now, it's $50 US. iPhone plus watch, it's 10. iPad is 20, and Vision OS is 30, which is kind of
this is how we're going to talk about, I think, OmniFocus and the Omni group, but this is how I remember OmniFocus being. It's not how they do it now, I don't think, but I remember it when I first got into using OmniFocus. Maybe it was version 2, maybe 1 or 2. I remember it was I had to buy it for each platform, and I think they have some other flexible options now. But yeah, so that's the thing. If you're the thing you can do a universal app, right, as paid up front.
You could,
but you might be leaving a lot of money on the table because not everybody wants like an iPad app or a Vision Pro app or something. I don't know if you could do the Vision Pro as universal, can you?
One of the fascinating strategies that I think evolved from, or at least I remember it from the indie game development community. Take a game like Hades, where most of its initial money was funded through its Steam early access. And so they built a game, they got a lot of early money early in, and then they had a game on Steam, and then kind of build it from there, got it to a stable state, and then eventually started showing up in consoles, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and then now you see it. And so there was like a tiered strategy of like, just, wait till it's in a good shape to get into each platform, and then sort of stagger the release to each platform, so that they don't have to spend all their time making this one game to be released in all the platforms, and then all the platforms have the same bugs or have different bespoke bugs that you have to deal with all at once. You can kind of like stagger your releases that way, and then you can kind of like build and refactor and refine your app over time so that it can be flexible and then you can charge per platform. Which then, like, things of Procreate are really good examples of apps. I think it started with Procreate targeting the iPad, partially because I don't know if Procreate came before or after the Pencil came out, the Apple Pencil, but Apple Pencil is what Procreate is what sells tons of Apple Pencils.
Yeah.
Like,
so it has unique features,
right?
It says a moat, and I think Things 3 is probably just because it's so beloved. Like, I guess maybe the message of these two apps is just make the best version of the app in your category,
Yeah.
or one of the best, which is very hard to do. I think paid upfront is the easiest thing to start with. It makes sense for a lot of different types of apps that people are probably not willing to do subscription for. But although again, it's hard to know maybe upfront what you think people would
I
pay
think
for
if
subscription
you're
for.
going to do paid upfront, you have to have a very compelling sales pitch is not the term,
You need
but
to
like
have a sales funnel that continuously gets new people and maybe an upgrade
yeah,
cycle. But which is weird
agreed.
because Things 3 has been the third version of Things has been around for so long. I think the running joke is it's like, I don't know, it's like the fifth or sixth version of Things 3 or something.
Well, I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world, and then there's people being
Billion of
born
them have
every day,
iPhones or something.
like slowly, right. Over time, you can even do the stats on like how many iPad people are out there,
Well,
how many people
but
have
it's just
kids, and how many kids have iPads.
paid up front. It's just not. It's hard to get recurring revenue because all your customers pay you once, and then you have to have ongoing support costs and such. So
It
it's
does.
I think it's one of those you need to have a funnel to get that continuously gets new customers, and then and we could talk about and we'll talk about some of the other tricks. Like I think OmniFocus has found a way to kind of, and some other apps have like found a way to kind of do an upgrade cycle, which I think is another way to kind of address it. We kind of get a hybrid approach.
I mean, I
We'll
think
talk
it's
about
one.
that.
I think yeah. So I guess we can kind of pivot to that, unless anybody has any final things to say about.
Any thoughts on paid up front?
No, other than the things you were saying about continued support and how do you fund that without.
Yeah.
I feel like paid up front, because it's the simplest to turn on and do, it's probably a good place to start if you want to just learn how to do it.
You just don't worry about a long-term support.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I mean, sometimes it makes sense. Games kind of make sense for games, doesn't it? Because games are usually short, like they have a temporary lifetime, in my experience anyway.
Well,
people play for a while and then.
I could say traditionally speaking, yes, right? Because usually it's just building one game and then that's it. But if you were talking like live service games, your Fortnite.
Oh, right.
Yeah, your Fortnite.
You can tell that I don't play a lot of I don't play PC games anymore, and I don't really even I dust off my Switch once every 3 months, So I don't. Yeah, everything now has these online components, but traditionally, you used to just buy a game and play it.
So like any live service games, right? The cost of maintaining and supporting those type of games, right? Like that, I can see that being like, that's a cost negative over time.
And that has games leads us into I think some of the other. Usually, games aren't paid anymore upfront. They're usually like free with like consumables or ads, right?
Yeah, or a combination of both. So you can say, for example, your typical example would be like a Candy Crush or Cooking Fever type game where it's a paid upfront game. I'm sorry, it's a free to play, free to download, free to play it but then they have these little like limitations, like you can only play 3 games a day, 2 games a day. If you want to play more, you pay some kind of, there's like 2 variations of currency. There's an in-game currency like coins, for example, and then there's a conversion, so to speak, currency. It's like a higher level currency, like a gem. And in order for you to unlock something or get a power up, you either have to grind really hard in the game, or you can pay to get access to more gems, which is usually $1 here, $1 there, whatever.
And these are implemented as consumable in-app purchases.
Yes,
which is so it's another way. And a lot of apps that aren't games will do the same thing. We'll have like maybe an ads in there, and then you can turn off the ads if you pay for a consumable or you unlock features.
They do it all. So like, for example, if you want to get more gems, you can either do one of 2 things. You can either pay $1.
We're still talking about games.
Yeah, but this
games are the master at this. Games are the master at using this strategy.
I mean, if you were to think of every conceivable casino technique that is utilized, you can just look at free to play games because they would do anything and everything to like figure out ways to like rip $1 out of you. And if they can't do it, they're definitely like sell your data to some data broker somewhere. But the thing about that is that so you can either watch a full interstitial ad if you that's the other way, right? For which then if
That's
you
what
watch
Fandango does that. Every time I go to order a movie ticket, stupid ad pops up. I'm like, go away. But
so
you
if
know,
it's
they get my eyeballs on it.
is it a full if it's a school screen video ad, they will make anywhere from like $1 to $2 per ad per view.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the genre or ad or whatever. What is it called? The category?
Interstitial.
Well, I mean the type of ad. Does that matter? Like,
yeah,
you know, like what the
I mean, there's the banner ads, which you might get like 5 cents, maybe even less, 25 cents, 10 cents, 5 cents.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is like you're not gonna get $1 per interstitial ad if your app is like has no users, right? Like, or would you?
No. Well, I mean, so I think with dividend calc, it's kind of funny because that was during the time when all I did was banner ads, and I only did the banner ads, generally in the main page and like select other pages, but I try to keep them fairly like lightweight. So my dividend calc app was an app that I had ads in, and you could pay. I forgot what it was, like maybe like $7 to $10. I forgot exactly the amount. It's been a while to get rid of the ads. But the banner ads would get you maybe like 5 cents, 2 cents, 5 cents, 25 cents if you're depending on like how you set up your waterfall model, which is a whole different thing. But basically, like your ad network, in terms of like you kind of like go down a tier of like horrible ads. Like it goes from like great ad network to like bad ad network to like horrible ad network, where then you're seeing like casino ads. So that's something I need to update. Looking at the old dividend calc website, but like ads is actually a pretty viable thing because like usually after I forgot it was like $100 to $200, Google, like if you went through Google Ad Mob, if you eventually earn at least $100, they will send you the check and deposit the check for you.
Right. You have to get to that threshold.
You have to get to that threshold, right? And that's why like making sure your fill rate is high for those ads. Right. That's an art in and of itself.
I think isn't this also the strategy that David Smith famously used for a lot of his apps? Yeah. I think he probably used it for Widget Smith. I don't honestly have used Widget Smith much, but yeah, I think he has some consumables, or I don't know. I think he might have subscription. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know that the app I remember using from him a lot was the Pedometer Plus app, Pedometer Plus, right, whatever app was, and that had like ads in it. I remember, and then you could turn them off. You can buy it and turn it off, and that kind of thing. So, and I remember him talking about filling, like some podcasts, I think he was talking about filling ads and using multiple ad networks so that you would always get the best ad, price in there. And so,
again, that's an art form in and of itself in terms of like trying to like scale and figure out which one you can like bring up the price and which one you bring the price down. Because what you're doing is like you're setting the price of how much you want to like sell. Right. Or pay. I forgot exactly how it works. Like how much you want somebody to pay for to have their ads show up on your app, which,
And if you're asking for too much, then you'll get nothing.
Then they don't show it. Yeah.
And, you can also go all the way and make your own ads like Mark Arment famously did for Overcast.
Yes.
He has his own system for that. Sells his own ads, which is way more advanced. I wouldn't start there, but Ad Mob is probably where you would start if you're going to do ads, right? That's the big one from Google.
Yes. I mean, if you don't want to do the work, right? I think like you look at like somebody like
it's probably not
John
worth
Gruber,
it.
right? Like John Gruber has one ad that he shows at once on the side nav. I think in Marco's case,
and it is RSS. There's like a sponsored
one ad, and then
you talk about there's a little tiny. If you go to Daring Fireball, his website, there's a little ad on the sidebar. It's like a little thing, and that's it. Yeah, and like as far as something like a banner ad would be.
Right, and in Marco's case, he has a very simple ad, like almost like a banner ad at the bottom of I don't know which page, but and there
It might be different now. I haven't turned them on with the new version of the app, so I'm not sure where he puts them. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, but it's all homegrown code.
yeah,
It's not.
yeah,
I think he sells them himself. I believe.
yeah. I'm pretty sure
So the whole
it's
thing is very interesting.
yeah. He actually has a page where he actually describes his pricing. If you wanted to have ads into, if you want to sell ads into his website, his um, into his network, like it's like maybe like $400 or $500 somewhere in that range. And then you can get, yeah, you just uh, your ads can show up in random sections of the app. I'm still trying to figure out where, to be honest. And yeah, it's like under each ad. It's under each ad. Any podcast that you're listening to, there's a little ad that shows up on the banner at the bottom of that profile, that podcast page. So that's all, yeah, homegrown.
Yeah.
So he gets
So
all that
when you
money
when you
himself.
get into the when you get into the free app and with different kinds of consumables and ads,
Mhm.
you can mix and match there, and the free part gets you downloads. You're going to get
Yeah.
more downloads potentially. I mean, almost certainly, if you're going to get any downloads, you'll get more if it's free to download.
Mhm.
And then you have to, you can use paywalls and use a consumable in-app purchase for a paywall behind some feature set. And that could be a variety of things from features, or it could be like number of things you can have in the app. Did you do that on Fab? Was it
Fave
Fab
10.
10? Fave
Oh,
10?
Fave
Did you
10.
do that?
So Fave
I
10
know a
was like
lot.
a
Yeah.
top 10 list app. It's more like a portfolio app, if I'm being quite frank. Um, that I did. Yeah, I restrict the amount. So I said you can use
Yeah.
up
That's what I
to,
mean.
I think you can use up to 5 or something, like I or even 10 lists. I was pretty generous about the lists. I think the amount of lists you can have, but then I blocked it in terms of like you can't have more than 10 or something like that. And you couldn't have more than 10 show up, and you can fill in as much as you want, but you couldn't have more than 10
Right. And
top 10 components.
yeah, and that's one way. You can also add in other kinds of consumables like themes or theme packs or whatever
Yeah,
aesthetic changes you could add in there. So there's a lot of options for you to take different kinds of features of your app and require payment for access, and you can do that with something like with consumables, with in-app consumables
yeah.
versus paid up front where it's going to get everything in
I mean,
one
if
go.
I'm thinking like another example might be like I think like a Duolingo does that where it's subscription and or ads. So if you just don't pay at all, you just get ads constantly. Um, so you can use ads as like the way. Oh, there's a nobody likes ads. So if you want to get rid of them and maybe also figure out ways to like limit the functionality, you can add that tension and then do the upsell in a variety of ways during like, oh, like this is great. How do I get more? How do I like continue this experience?
So that leads us into subscriptions
Mhm.
themselves. You can have just Apple provides a subscription mechanism. We're talking about North America here. I know that the EU has different rules nowadays for what you can do, but we're not talking about those options. The traditional Apple App Store options. So you can do a subscription model. And Kotaro, on the top of your head, do you know remember the different types of subscriptions that are available from Apple?
Different types of subscriptions. Or well, there's the annual, the monthly, the annual. Um, there's also free trials that you can provide your users.
Right. You can do free timed free trials, right?
Yeah. Yes. So like 7 days free trial, and then like
Yeah.
Slopes is a really good example of like the bizarre like set of options that you can have. So you can not bizarre, but like the plethora of options you can have.
It's not bizarre. Yeah.
So you can do an annual plan where you're not reminded every month. You can do a monthly plan. You can do you can even isolate it to like several a set amount of months and then be done with it, or a weekly plan. you can have a lot of control in terms of like what type of plans
Yeah.
you want to offer. I think in the case of like Curtis's slopes, getslopes.com,
There you
which
go.
is a slopes tracking, like it's tracking your performance on your slopes, your skiing or your snowboarding
Skiing and snowboarding,
performance. Yeah. And his app
it's
started. It's kind of interesting because I feel like Curtis of all people like went through the entire gamut of like every possible
yeah.
payment scenarios you can think of. So that Slopes was originally like a $3 to $5 app when it first started, and then it went to subscription. It went to free, and then free with consumables, but then quickly pivoted to subscriptions. I believe. And when you say consumables, it's basically like
Like a
maybe
day
like
pass.
a day pass or like
he
a
had
weekly
yeah.
pass. Yeah, like some kind of like
Yeah, I
time
remember that.
limitation.
And
But
you can
you still have
even
to like reset it.
you can even give a gift of a subscription through the
Oh, okay.
website. I exactly know how that's implemented, but that's pretty cool.
I mean, when we talk about moats, I mean, whether or not it was whether or not it was something that Curtis felt like he had to do. I mean, whether it felt Curtis knew at the time, I think it was like, oh, I own all the data, right? That was a huge like win for him in terms of like making sure that he had email lists that he could maintain. Um he had um he had access. I wouldn't say access to the user's data, but more like he could actually do something more meaningful with the user's data. I mean, not in a creepy way, but like in a way that would be like
Yeah.
now he can do stuff where you can do like it's like a mini social app, right? Where you can like log with your friends all the performances and then have leaderboards and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean the point is Slope's a good example of what you can do with subscriptions.
Mhm.
And then I think we all have other examples of subscriptions
One of
apps.
the
It's like the most. I feel like it's the most common monetization scheme now, besides the free with like ads or something like that. In especially for non games, I feel like because everything seems to want a subscription nowadays.
I think it's the one thing that actually now thinking about it a little more clearly, I remember with the dividend calc app, like its Achilles heel is that it was always dependent on a service to provide me with the real time stock quotes and data. At the time, it was free, and then they were like, oh, you know what, we need you to pay $100 a year, which at the time was like, oh yeah, sure, done. Here's my here's my credit card. Go, right? And then so there's, but eventually over time, like every because there was IEX cloud service, which was actually a really good service for its time for like providing you with real time stock data and updates. Then it got like shut out of Nasdaq and the Dow and all the rest of the big wigs, and we're like, you can't have access to that data. And then they had to
Yeah.
charge like
So that's a another reason why you want a subscription sometimes for the recurring revenue. If you have your subscription on your back end. One thing that I thought was interesting, we talked a little bit about Overcast. They Marco has a very standard yearly subscription, right? But the thing that I think is one of the subscription models I think is pretty cool is Fantastical or Flexibits, because they have multiple apps. They have a subscription model of where they have individuals, they have the families, and they have teams and business, and they all have different rates. And I think it works across a couple different apps. So they have a whole account system you log into, and you can use the Apple login with Apple thing. I think that's what I do because I'm a customer of Fantastical, and I think it's not necessarily a subscription. In this case, I guess they use the in-app subscription purpose. They do that. They use the in-app system, but I'm not sure that's the only way you have to buy it. I'm not 100% sure. It might be the only way to buy it, but you can log in on the web. But the point is, they have a subscription, which is like some service that more than one of their apps can access and do stuff. Like the service provides features in the app beyond just the device. I mean, beyond just the software running on your device. That's like more of a SaaS model or hybrid SaaS model because it has a really good native apps. That's a way more advanced kind of monetization scheme, way more advanced application, but it's the kind of thing where you can provide a lot of value and get a lot of recurring revenue. Hopefully, they get a lot of recurring revenue. I hope they do because it's a great product. But
just don't be Adobe.
Yeah, don't be Adobe. I don't think they make it hard to cancel. I haven't had a desire to cancel, so pretty sure it's pretty easy to cancel. Actually, anything going through Apple's subscription system is easy.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting now, when we talk about sort of subscription fatigue. That's one reason why you might consider not doing it, because everything is practically a subscription these days. So you have Netflix. Everybody's going to want to subscribe to Netflix or Disney or some of the one streaming service, right? Like you almost have to decide like where you fall on the stack of like, oh, am I on the level of like, oh, I need this app every month and I'm willing to pay for it every month or whatever, an annual fee, a subscription fee of some kind, right? If you're not that app, then and you don't have a back end that you need to support, that's partially why Procreate can kind of get away with being a paid upfront, because it's an offline app. Kind of similar to like Sketch. Sketch used to be subscription. I think it still is technically, but it was a lot worse before when they were trying to be an online app. I think now they kind of like pivot back to its origins. So I don't think of it as much of a it still is. Oh, but at least the standard subscription is only Mac only license.
Yeah, they have
right.
They have a Mac only license per seat, which gives you 1 year of updates. This is going to be a good lead into our last main area here. And they have a standard subscription like you might be used to. You pay monthly and build yearly. Standard thing. So $10 a month, build yearly, and you get all the blah, blah, blah. Then they have like a Mac only one. So it doesn't give you the collaborative online features, I guess, but it just lets you buy the app and get 1 year of updates, but you get to keep the app, I believe. Like I don't think I don't think it goes away. Yeah, it says yours to keep forever. So it's the closest thing you can get to just the original, the old model of software. You just buy the version you want, except that what Sketch does, and some other people, I think OmniFocus does this too, or the Omni Group does this, where you get updates for the lifetime of that purchase. So I like that approach too for some of this software, at least the option, because if you don't want all the other features, then why not?
I think the other features that I think, like for example, this standard subscription was good, is good if you're a freelancer that has to collaborate with like kind of with people willing to work with Sketch. Unfortunately, there's not many now that Figma has pretty much eaten up all their lunch for that kind of like cross collaboration work. Sketch is kind of a very niche product, but it kind of goes back to being what it was originally, which was kind of this best of class vector art UI prototyping tool. And that's at least on the Mac. I can't speak for like everything else. Part of the beauty of a product like Figma is it's a little more catered to like cross-platform experience.
Yeah,
and that's hard to beat.
And I was mentioning Omni Group and like OmniFocus specifically is what I use right now as a to-do app, I guess you can say, which is kind of underselling it a lot. But they've gone through, I think, a couple different approaches over the years. And the current one we have up on screen in our recording here, we have the standard license, standard subscription, where you get everything. So they switched, I think it was this year, or this version, it might have been this version, where they switched to everything for a one subscription price. You can pay $10 a month, and you'll get the Mac, the iPhone, the iPad, the Apple Watch, Apple Vision Pro, and the web version, all for one monthly fee. But it's a per month fee, and it's obviously auto renewing. So this is really simple, and you just keep paying it till you cancel. So it's the traditional kind of like subscription. But the thing that I've used is their other licensing, where they have a standard and a pro license for the software, and the standard and pro are gatekeeping features. The standard has one set of features, and pro has more features. but you pay one time, and similar to Sketch, you just get to keep that version of the app and until the next major version. So this is version 4. So if you pay like $150, you can just you get Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, and Apple Vision Pro, but not the web. You'll get almost everything for one-time payment, and they'll give you updates until version 5.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty interesting. And they have hefty discounts if you upgrade. And then they also have just a web version, like if you just need the web version, like $5 a month. But I like this approach.
Yeah.
And this came up in the Slack. I think Zorn was saying he likes the Omni Group's approach. I like this because this is a tool that I use all the time. I don't really want to pay a monthly fee for it, even though that makes sense. And a lot of ways, at least for OmniFocus right now, there's no collaborative features in it. It's not like Todoist or some of its competitors. It's just to me, it just was always like software just runs on my Mac or runs on my iPhone, and the amount of backend that I utilize from them is just syncing. Which I mean, I'm not saying just syncing like it's a simple problem. I'm just saying like that's the only thing that I'm aware of that I'm really paying for. There's not like collaboration stuff. So, and then they have all these versions, and so I like this approach. I did this for this approach. I did the pro version. But if you don't have the cash or you just want to try it out for a while, you do the subscription for $10 a month. So it's like they have something for different price points. They have something for different, different use cases, as it were. And there's probably a free trial in here somewhere too. And I think they just kind of hit all the bases, and they have upgrade pricing, and it's just, and you can buy it, I think, on their store. You get a license for it. I have no idea how they got all this to work in the back end, honestly. Like I remember it was like a big deal. I listened to their podcast sometimes, and I kind of vaguely remember them talking about this some time ago, trying to unify all this stuff. It could not have been easy to get all this to work, but it's pretty seamless. It's kind of amazing. So, Omni Group is great.
That is and so it's kind of funny because like I know like Nebula talks about this idea. So Nebula is a streaming service with a lot of Nebula. More very. Like it's basically where all the YouTubers eventually will end up, like all the good high content ones at least, or like high concept ones. But the funny thing about that is like they have a lifetime subscription deal where you pay, I think it's like $300 for something, like it's some kind of like you can pay like, I think, and they always have like these discounts, so like absurd amount of discounts, but like so that's $25. Is that $25? No, that's
I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, they have like a lifetime fee, which is like $300 or something. And
there you go, lifetime membership.
Right. So the way, which is a streaming service, which I think is like insane. It's like, but according to
isn't it higher than it used to be? Didn't it used to be lower?
No, I mean it's generally low because they do this whole like if they have these videos on YouTube, and they sort of have this strategy where they're like promoting the Nebula channels on their YouTube channel.
There's a YouTube. They did some YouTube videos. They put them on YouTube. They did some videos about, I think, recently, kind of around the anniversary of Nebula or something, and they talked about if I remember correctly, about how Nebula came to be and how the pricing kind of worked, at least in the early days. I'm just saying, I'm not sure if this was it always $300. That's
fairly new. So
there's a service.
I forgot which podcast it was. There might be I think it was like Wonderlock or something like that. Something. Where they actually describe the reasoning why the $300, like how they came around this $300 price range for a lifetime.
I think I'm thinking of the same video.
Yeah, and they were describing like how they priced it so that they can make sure that they don't have to worry like, oh, this will cost this,
right,
whatever to the end.
And in this case, we're talking about the service is the video platform and the content, and then the applications or the delivery mechanism.
Right.
So this is more of a traditional SaaS product that has an app. So it's a little different than maybe a lot of indie type people might be thinking if they're coming from the Apple side, but it's a very effective strategy. But I was thinking of, what was it that had a is it one of the bookmarking sites or something? One of them had a price that would like go up. It would go up over time, and so if you'd have to, I can't remember what it was, but I remember something. It was like every time you the price would go up the longer you waited.
This is like one of those ones that like is like in the it should be in like the Internet Archive somewhere. But it's like one that died in like the early stages of the internet or something. Like in there, I feel like but it was popular for its time. It's like one of those like cult favorites. But I feel like I know what you're talking about. It's hilarious. Um, yeah, are we desperately looking?
I'm desperately looking. So vamp.
Bam.
On the
Is it
podcast.
vamp?
We could edit out this whole section, but I probably
No,
won't. So
that's
just
okay.
like
we just let it ride. But getting back to the whole point about cost, right? Like it's like if the app that you're building, and this is kind of where I'm sort of I'm always trying to think about, even as weird as it sounds, even when I'm prototyping, I'm still thinking it's like, well, if I have to build an online backend, what is this going to cost me, right? Like if I'm doing something as simple as like a CloudKit, like a coordinated CloudKit sync thing, like I don't have to worry about that until I make some of the data public, right? Like instead of like, because all the cost up to that point is on the users in terms of their data storage and usage, which is the nice thing about CloudKit in general. If you use that as an indie developer for iOS, and of course, assuming that you're staying within the Apple ecosystem and you don't care about like server maintenance and dealing with customer services and that kind of stuff.
So I found it. I don't think this is the current
Pinboard?
policy anymore. I think, but there was a time. Pinboard is the product that I currently have subscriptions for.
Oh, okay.
And there was a time. I think it's since changed, but you can find it on the blog. There was a time where users would pay a one-time sign-up fee that grows by a fraction of the penny with each new sign-up.
Mm-hmm.
So like the fee started, it was like at the time this blog post was like $10.55, and then it went up. Now the price is higher. It's like $22 or more, whatever a year now, for depending on the service. But this is what I was thinking of. Yeah, Pinboard had an option where it would go up. The sign-up fee would grow along with the user base, which was a pretty clever way of balancing out the costs. And,
I mean,
and also giving you some like urgency to sign up because it'll be cheaper now than later.
That's the thing, right? Like that to me. I think that's a hidden sales tactic, and I don't feel like people have really like tapped in. Is this idea of like, I'm not a big fan of pressure sales, but I feel like sometimes like if the sale is good, right? Like let's say for example you go, hey, if you were like for game, it's always going to be my example, but like if I'm making a fighting game and maybe it's only got like, maybe I'm just starting, so maybe I don't charge too much for the fighting game. Maybe it'd be like $6 to $10 tops, right, for like 6 characters. But then I go, in the next month, we're going to release a new character, and here's all the cool features. But if you don't get in now, you can get the character. You can buy the game now, and you get that character practically for free, and then in perpetuity, right? As well as any new characters. But if you don't get it now, you're just going to pay the extra $2 that we're going to raise the price on.
I just want to say also that Pinboard it's like Craigslist in its design, philosophy. It's like very old school, and I think I don't know. I haven't seen the creator post much in like a long time, but last time I checked, it was like a single person, I think, project, and it was not like a huge amount of infrastructure. It's like one of those things where if you find the right niche, you can run a simple service that can just be, very can be profitable for you without like you being run ragged. I hope he's not being run ragged with support and everything. My impression was that he was not, but Pinboard's kind of cool to look at. They don't do that pricing thing anymore, looks like, but I remember at the time it was really clever.
I was just thinking,
it got me to sign up at the time.
One other idea, and we can kind of wrap up after this, but I was talking, I think it was last podcast or the podcast before, about this pixel art app called PixSquare, but it's like PixQuare, which is
what is this, Web 2.0 again?
I know. I'm sure. What's cool about this app? So it's for the iPad. It's for the iPad and the iPhone. It's kind of similar to Procreate in the sense that it's designed for those platforms. They don't have a Mac app, at least not yet. It's meant for the Apple Pencil. it was designed around the Apple Pencil, even though you can technically use an iPhone. It doesn't quite sync up exactly with on iCloud, so that's the one little flaw that I probably will have to, but it's one developer. The same, I believe, is Sun Yuan. I could be wrong about that. But and I think a lot of it is inspired, if not maybe by another program called Aspire, which is just a Mac or just a PC specific pixel art app. But the beauty about this app, at least from a payment perspective, is like you have several different options. One, you can do, I believe you can do a paid upfront for either the iPad or the iPhone. I think a really cheap subscription model, and then you can pay a one-time fee for both of them. So I think that's like somewhere in the range of like $20. Yes, there it is. So there's lifetime, full-time. Oh, that's 30% off right now. $13, right, for full-time access.
Yeah, these are all listed. I don't know how you access them, but yeah, like according to the App Store page, there's a variety of prices available.
Right, or you can get $18 for. So it's usually $20. $18 for
lifetime full access.
Yeah, and it's only for $2 for $1 more you get lifetime access for the full set, iPhone and iPad.
Okay.
And then so I think there's lots of I think it'd be tons of options. Although this feels a little weird.
I wouldn't like the list of in-app purchases that are available on the App Store page. I always find a little confusing.
Yeah, or you can just pay them coffee, but the coffee doesn't do anything. That's more like a tip jar thing.
Yeah, tip jar thing.
But it's a beautiful app. I'm using it right now for some prototype work. But your point you're making is that the pricing model is interesting. It's interesting in the sense of like it's kind of like an interesting like upsell. It's like that typical like here are the general base like here's the basic Mac. And here's clearly the map we want you to we want you to buy, and then there's the other like higher end ones if you actually want to pay more, right?
Yeah. But I mean that's what you do. That's what you do as a business. Apple's famous for this, and it's I think it's from what you described, you're getting a lot of value for that upsell.
Yeah.
And I mean Apple's famous for doing this, where they'll have like the iPhone model or something. You have the low end version, then the middle one, and then the super expensive one. And people will be like, "Oh my God, why is it so expensive?" It's like the super expensive version of anything that or the Max based upon like different like storage and stuff. Super expensive one is just ridiculously expensive for the vast majority of people. But if you need it, it's available. The base model is what most people buy, but it's kind of like underpowered a little bit. So really, like with iPhones, my tradition is always to buy the middle one. Mm-hmm. Although in recent years, Apple's made the base one just a little bit better, so it's a little tougher. But for the longest time, it was always like buy the middle one. And Apple's really good at that upsell because they would hold off like on storage or hold off on memory or something to make you want to bump up. And I know it really piss off people, but the way I look at it is like the actual price for what you want is probably the middle tier one, but Apple's providing a cheaper option if you're budget conscious. It's still like 80-90% of what you get. And like that's the way I look at it. And so I didn't really have a problem with it.
If you are one of the things people just forget about a lot is like, at least we're getting a little off tangent, but like if like this to me, this Pixel Square, and to the extent like Apple iPhone Pros, right? Like these apps, creatives are willing to pay for because in the end they help you build, make art for which then you can earn a living off of. So
you have to find what the market value is for whatever you're selling, which means you have to experiment with prices. We didn't talk about that option, like what options are available for trying to experiment with prices, but that's something I know that I think SaaS people have done forever. You might have to experiment with whatever strategy you're using about changing your prices, and it's okay to do that. It's not like wrong or bad or something. That's how you find what the market equilibrium price is for your product. And because sometimes you might find out that, hey, people aren't willing to pay as much as you think it's worth. Other times you may find out you're charging way too little compared to what people are willing to pay.
Oh yeah.
And as long as, everybody's feels like they're getting what they want. You're getting money, and the customer's getting value that the customer feels is commensurate with the price. Then everybody's happy, and that's capitalism. That's why it's great. So play around with your prices. I think is one of the things too that I guess we don't mention enough. That is a thing. I thought there was some kind of support for it. Is there any support for it in any app store? Or am I just delusional? I might be just delusional because it's Apple and their back end's usually terrible for everything.
For the app or for?
I mean, you could change the prices, but is there any there's no automation, is there? Around
automation in terms of to get you can schedule your price increase if that's what
you do, sales or anything too.
Yeah, you can do sales, but
See, I'm woefully uneducated on what's
sales.
Available.
It's more you can time it so that it at this date go down and then at this date go back up or something. There are ways to do it so that you can get value.
So you experiment with pricing and sales, and there you go.
Cool.
So,
yes.
There's a lot more. Just talking through this with you today, because it's the first time I really thought about this in a while.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more options than I remember. For the longest time, it felt like the App Store. The App Store was originally just it was just paid up front at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people were very upset with that after a while because it was hard to make money. And then Apple added subscriptions, and I know that people wanted things like traditional upgrades. And it feels like what Apple has provided is just flexible enough that most successful models seem to be available. I'm sure that there's still some that are harder than others, but I'm surprised when I'm saying surprised by how many ways there are to slice and dice with the tools available, however primitive they may be.
I mean, if
they're not bad.
If you're expecting, I mean,
but,
we're talking about the iTunes, the back end of that thing is it must be such at this point it must be such spaghetti logic. You need unit tests just to maintain okay, this is what it's supposed to do. Because I can't imagine how overly complex that back end must be at this point. So yeah.
So to wrap things up, I guess what's I don't know. So do you, Coltro? You're the one. I think of the three of us, you've actually put out apps in the world and experimented more with these things to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice? If I'm starting out, I'm trying to make my first app that I hope to make any amount of money with. Do you have any advice on a monetization strategy in very broad strokes? I know it really depends on what you're building and all that, but very broad strokes. Do you have any advice?
I think if you have to be very careful about anytime you involve, the moment your mind thinks about involving a back end of some kind, you have to immediately think about costs and how you're going to litigate that. You also have to say, okay, what is the true value of this app, right? Is my app special in any way? Am I just doing it as a portfolio app, right? And if that's the case, you don't lie to yourself and say, oh, this app is going to be the app idea of the year. It's every app idea, for the most part, any app idea of value, mostly has been there's mostly something there, right? So where's your angle, right? So it becomes a question of how do I ensure that if I build this app, right? I mean, if it's a passion project, that's one thing, right? We could just throw rationality out the wall. You just want to do it, and I'm 100% on board with that attitude. You might suffer for it in the long run, but it might not even be practical. But some of the best ideas are because of that passion bear fruit, something interesting because it was actually useful, right? The key thing is useful and about how you value. Then your next step is to figure out, okay, let's say it's an offline app, just to be generous, right? Most of it, majority of it is an offline app. You don't rely on if the internet shuts down off your app will still function fine, right? That I feel is almost that's a potential for majority of it. If it's a really good professional app or a pro app, right? Feel free to. I think that's a really good indicator to maybe do a paid upfront model, versus if you have things you have to do, whether you need a back end or a big team to support it. whatever, right? Like you have to sort of start to figure out how your app can scale properly, or if
Yeah.
you have to come up with a different strategy, or even let's say like an off the cuff type of strategy where you would be like, okay, you know what, maybe we don't make a majority of our money in the app store itself, but we make it outside the app store. So whether it be like third party support, enterprise support, whatever whatever different types of strategies are out there in terms of like maybe like you can add plugins or you know like maybe in Procreate's case, maybe they can sell brushes or something of that nature, right? On their website. Like there are a variety of different other avenues to get more money if you want to choose to go that route. So so I guess it comes back to I know it goes back to like depends, but I feel like that's the general broad strokes I can feel.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yeah, I mean, I would say you don't want to get too complicated right out of the gate. I've heard this strategy just starting small and building up. So start with, if you're going to build an app, start with something simple, start with something that's free, maybe with an in-app purchase or just paid up front, just to like learn the ropes, as it were.
Yeah.
You can always change it too. It's not like you're wed forever to any particular strategy. So
right.
you might have to experiment, but go with the simple thing. It's way more complicated to create a custom backend with Stripe and things on your web and then have it hook. It's like start with something simple. Maybe just turn on, like, you just charge $1 for it, charge $5 for it, whatever, or just have it free. I would say if you want any downloads, make it free, and then with some kind of in-app purchase to monetize it. Doesn't have to be a subscription. It could just be like a one-time thing, like to turn off ads or something. So probably if you want downloads, honestly, you probably have to start with free unless you're like super compelling for your niche. And then once you're free, that means you kind of routes you into putting ads and or like in-app purchase consumables in there. And then the more complicated option is a subscription. I mean, it's not a ton more complicated, right? But subscriptions are recurring. And then you can like go to that. So start easy, start small, work your way up, experiment. My advice primarily just to experiment, to find out what works.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
so Aaron, how
that I agree with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Aaron, what's your advice on how to get rich with apps?
I have no idea.
Okay, how about your any thoughts about what we were talking about today? Final thoughts.
Just like I as a user, I like having the option to be able to get rid of the ads, because if I actually use the app, I would want to get rid of the ads. So,
yeah,
if I leave the ads on, it means I don't use it.
That's good. I'm gonna try to. I think I'm gonna clip that and use that as the tagline. That's funny.
I mean, that's the one thing that I'm not like crazy about, is the idea of like, oh, if I need to pay you to get rid of ads, I suspect like it's probably not a good enough app in the first place. But
oh, really?
I don't know.
It's interesting.
I guess it's more of a me thing than it really is like an honestly truthful thing.
Maybe. I mean, I always look at it. I think I look at it more like Aaron. I see the ads and I'm like, well, this is the monetization strategy, and then it's annoying on purpose, so I'm going to pay you to make the annoyance go away. Which I just think of it as like, well, I mean, that's just kind of how it is.
I'm not saying it's a bad strategy.
No, it's not. But I understand. I understand that point, because it's like ideally you would just pay for it because you get value from it. But you know how that's not how it works, especially with software. Sometimes you gotta like be prodded a little bit to hand over the money. And
I know.
That's a minor prodding. There's way worse than that.
Compelling, upsell. Like I think Pick Square is like a good example.
Just don't be like Adobe is what we're saying.
Yeah, don't be Adobe.
Don't be Adobe, and you'll already be ahead of the game.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's all we have for today. You can learn more about PhillyCocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack group, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is, and share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing. Actually, I don't have a one more.
Oh, wow.
I'm so unprepared.
We don't have a one more thing.
So our one more thing would just be happy scales. How's that? going to just promote an
Again,
indie
sorry,
developer. It's an app on the App Store, is an iPad and an iPhone version. And what it is
it's Happy Scale.
Is it? Did I say scales or scale?
Yeah, scales.
Okay, Happy Scale.
HappyScale.com.
I apologize, Russ. I'm already fluffing this, but it is a weight tracking app on the App Store. I believe it's a subscription based app. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. But it's our indie friend. That's a lot of people like his app, and I am promoting it. So yes, so weight loss tracking app.
Yeah, there's a. Oh, I think I paid the lifetime on it. Again, I don't know if we mentioned this outright, but lifetime subscriptions. Oh, yeah, we did, I guess, earlier. I think I got a lifetime, one of the lifetimes. But yeah, there's subscriptions.
One thing that's interesting about that app, right? How much of that do you think it has a back end that it's relying on, or is it all on device? It must use some back end.
I'm not sure. It could actually. I haven't actually tried to look at like a proxy or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it could be. It could be all on device. Oh wait, it probably uses iCloud.
Oh,
for syncing,
sure,
or something. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it could just be all on device
because it's just an iOS app, right? There's no Android version of this.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, and I mean, I use it, so I just put in my weight every day, and it's been keeping track of it for years, and gives you nice graphs and stuff. I like it, and it's simple, and it doesn't annoy me at all. So. Look, for these like utility apps.
Does it have ads?
If it has ads, I haven't seen them because I paid for it like a long time ago.
The lifetime one is actually pretty cheap. It's like $40.
It's not expensive if you use this thing every day, and you get a lot of value. If you're like me and you're on this weight loss journey, an app like Happy Scale is very helpful, and it's nice to look at it. I could see my graph when it's going down. If it starts going up again, it's like, oh boy, I better like watch my calories tomorrow and that kind of thing. Or get
don't drink that beer. Don't drink the beer.
Don't drink the beer. Yeah, exactly. It's like that's beer alert. We should actually there's a feature request. The weight starts going up, have a little alert says stop drinking the beer. Have like a custom alert message. It's like that I could type in, and because it'll probably because I had a beer the night before.
It could be like its own version of the Alarmo. Kind of like sound.
Exactly. He's like, don't drink that beer. Oh, you could take notes in here too. I didn't even do that. I should do that.
Wow,
notes.
I'm
learning new things about the app just looking at the App Store page.
This is our podcast in a nutshell.
Yeah. We prepare even better than accidental ATP accidental.
Yeah, we're way more prepared than ATP for sure. Well, till next time, good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always. Yeah, don't be Adobe.